I find myself speechless in the midst of this. Another 4 years of hatred, leaning us towards a world I do not want to live in, leaning us towards a world that will be hard to raise my daughter in. P.S. She has no daughter.
Once upon a time, Disney believed they had found their perfect Snow White. Rachel Zegler, young, talented, critically acclaimed, and ready to lead a billion-dollar reboot of one of the most legendary animated films of all time. But what started as a career-defining opportunity has turned into one of the most dramatic downfalls Hollywood has seen in years. It wasn't the dress, the trailer, or the dwarfs that set the internet on fire. It wasn't even the movie itself. It was a single post, just 7 words, words that exploded across social media like wildfire and dragged Disney straight into the middle of a political minefield.
Snow White, budget $250 million, box office $43 million. Oh, but it's only been 2 days, give it a chance. No, I'm not gonna give it a chance. I'm not even talking about that number. Because like all the flops are unsurprising at this point.
Suddenly, Rachel Zegler wasn't being talked about for her acting, her singing, or her fresh take on an iconic role. She was trending for all the wrong reasons, accused of arrogance, targeted by fans and insiders, and quietly distanced by the very company that once championed her. And behind the scenes, things were even worse. Secret meetings, angry executives, a massive box office flop, and one furious producer who reportedly flew across the country just to confront her. Now, with Disney losing over $100 million on a project that was supposed to revive the brand, insiders are pointing the blame at one person, Rachel Zegler. So what really happened? Was she unfairly targeted for speaking her mind?
And the Disney movie, remember she was out like a couple years ago being like, there's certainly not going to be a prince rescuing me, I can tell you that. And then even Disney got on its heels and they're like, we're going to reshoot the movie immediately. Like, we're going to make some changes.
Or did her own actions truly derail the biggest role of her life? Rachel Zegler didn't come out of nowhere. She was handpicked by Steven Spielberg himself to star in West Side Story, a role that most aspiring actresses could only dream of. She was just 19, relatively unknown, but when the film dropped, critics praised her voice, her screen presence, and her charisma. She wasn't just good, she was electric. That breakout performance earned her a Golden Globe and an invite into Hollywood's inner circle almost overnight. Soon, Rachel was everywhere.
Rachel Zegler is not doing anything to silence all of those reports, rumors, and online chatter that she and Gal Gadot are beefing. Yes, beefing.
We know magazine covers, press junkets, red carpets. She was no longer just a rising star. She was being positioned as the future of the industry. And then came Disney. The casting of Rachel Zegler as Snow White was more than just another gig. This was the ultimate stamp of approval. Disney's most iconic princess, remade for a new generation. The studio was betting hundreds of millions of dollars that she would lead them into a more inclusive modern era of storytelling. But from the beginning, not everyone was on board. The backlash started almost immediately. Some critics, especially on the political right, took issue with Disney casting a Latina actress as Snow White.
So much backlash to her arrogance and just inanity. Well, she's back, and she's very, very upset about the Trump win. Okay.
Arguing that it was just another example of forced diversity, but Zegler didn't shy away. In fact, she leaned in. She spoke openly about how the original 1937 film was outdated. She said Snow White didn't need a prince to save her, that the storyline was weird, even creepy. She called Prince Florian a stalker. The tone wasn't celebratory. It was dismissive, almost defiant. And while some fans appreciated her honesty, others were stunned.
Come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats.
Here was the lead of a Disney remake, publicly roasting the very movie she was supposed to represent. It wasn't just controversial, it was bold, maybe too bold. Instead of building hype, the comments fueled doubt. Was Disney trying too hard to modernize a classic? And was Rachel Zegler the right person to lead this transformation? Or was she slowly becoming a liability? At first, Disney brushed off the controversy. After all, this was Rachel Zegler and their chosen star, their Snow White.
Something is going on behind the scenes with almost every major animation, video game, and movie studio that they're doing this intentionally or something. I don't know. I'm not even gonna talk about this. People are like, oh wow, Snow White flopped. Who is surprised? You cast arguably the least genuine, most out of touch and disliked person in our industry, and our industry is Hollywood.
The internet would move on, the film would speak for itself, but it didn't, because what came next wasn't just backlash, it was the beginning of a storm. And when that storm hit, Disney's billion-dollar gamble started unraveling faster than anyone could have predicted. By the time Snow White hit theaters, Disney had already poured a staggering $410 million into the film, with $270 million sunk into production and another $140 million in global marketing, promotional campaigns, residuals, and behind-the-scenes costs. This was no small side project. Snow White was supposed to be Disney's next live-action juggernaut, a crown jewel in their billion-dollar remake strategy, the same strategy that gave them massive hits like The Lion King, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast. But when the numbers started rolling in, the dream collapsed almost instantly. The film opened with a mediocre domestic haul.
Seems like Rachel Zegler's heart is shady. Or perhaps she doesn't give an F. To celebrate the film's release, she took to social media and shared this post with 13 pictures from the making of the movie.
Then suffered a brutal 66% drop in its second weekend. Globally, the box office barely scratched $143 million, nowhere near the break-even point. According to projections, even with streaming rights, merchandise, and home entertainment bundled in, the film is still expected to lose over $115 million, and that's being generous. This isn't just a box office flop, it's a brand-level disaster. It sent shockwaves through Disney's boardroom, raised eyebrows on Wall Street, and made headlines worldwide. And unlike previous underperformers, this time, people wanted to know why. Why did such a massive legacy-backed project fall so hard? Why did the audience, especially families and longtime Disney fans, just not show up? At first, the usual suspects were blamed.
It became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. People will assume it's a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie, Andrew Burnap.
Reboot fatigue, some said. Others pointed to the awkward trailers, the off-putting CGI, or the lack of chemistry between cast members. A few even blamed it on changing audience tastes. But beneath all the surface-level critiques was one common thread: Rachel Zegler. Her name wasn't just trending in headlines, it was popping up in IMDb review bombs, YouTube comments, and reaction videos across every platform. People weren't just disappointed in the film, they were actively avoiding it because of the controversy surrounding its star. She had unintentionally become a lightning rod, and now the narrative wasn't about Snow White, it was about Rachel Zegler. And what triggered it all was a single social media post. A sentence so short most people missed it, but Disney never recovered. It was supposed to be a celebration. In August, after Disney dropped the first trailer for Snow White, the internet responded with massive buzz. Within just 24 hours.
What would you say to those who are just kind of overly critiquing the film at this point? You've worked so hard on it.
The teaser had racked up over 120 million views, a staggering number even by Disney standards. Rachel Zegler posted a thank you to fans, clearly excited and overwhelmed. The post was full of gratitude and energy, but then came the last line, just a few words casually placed at the end of the message. And always remember, Free Palestine. 7 words. That's all it took to turn the internet upside down and shift the spotlight away from the film entirely. What started as a celebration suddenly became a political flashpoint, and Rachel Zegler found herself at the very center of it. To some, it was a bold and brave statement. To others, it was outrageously inappropriate, especially during a time when tensions over the Israel-Palestine conflict were reaching global highs. The post instantly went viral, but not in the way Disney had hoped.
All right, guys, I watched Snow White, so you don't have to. Let's get into it. Now, first things first, Snow White gets her name not from the fairness of her skin, as we obviously know. Rachel Zegler would be a miscast in that sense.
Fans, political commentators, and industry insiders began dissecting the statement. Was it intentional? Was she making a political stand while representing a family-friendly, corporate-funded blockbuster? And more importantly, was Disney okay with this? Behind the scenes, the answer was a resounding no. Reports soon surfaced that Disney was blindsided by the post. According to multiple insiders, executives were furious. Not only had Zegler thrown a political grenade into a global rollout, she had done it without warning, and without considering the ripple effect it would have on international markets. Worse, this wasn't just a viral moment. It was becoming the defining story of the film. Rather than discuss the movie's modern take, its cast, or its visuals, all the media attention turned toward Rachel Zegler's politics. The phrase "Free Palestine" was now being used as a weapon against both her and the entire film's release strategy. Disney's PR team reportedly went into crisis mode.
A lot of folks that helped bring Snow White to the big screen. Noticeably absent and not included in this carousel of 13 pictures, you guessed it, her co-star Gal Gadot.
The studio pulled back on marketing, public statements were avoided, and internally panic was spreading. The line that had been tossed off so casually at the end of a tweet had just blown up a $400 million rollout. But what Disney did next only made the fire burn hotter, because someone inside the company wasn't just angry, they were ready to confront Zegler face to face. At this point, the situation was spiraling. The backlash wasn't just online anymore. It had reached the highest levels of Disney's corporate offices. Executives weren't just frustrated, they were furious, and no one was more enraged than Mark Platt.
Everybody shares and is mindful of what each person is getting, and we spread our resources evenly, which is where this idea of fairness, as Snow White is the fairest of them all, is really presented in the film.
The powerful Hollywood producer behind the Snow White remake, Platt isn't just some background name. He's one of the most respected producers in the industry, with credits ranging from La La Land to Wicked. He's also the man who handpicked Rachel Zegler for the lead role, pushing Disney to embrace her as the face of the franchise. So when Zegler posted that now infamous Free Palestine tweet during the middle of the film's promotional campaign, Mark Platt didn't sit back. According to a bombshell report from Variety, Platt boarded a plane and flew across the country. Not for a press event, not for a premiere, but to personally confront Zegler in New York. He wasn't coming to talk, he was coming to reprimand her. The meeting, according to insiders, was tense. Platt demanded that she take the post down to undo the damage before it snowballed even further, but the effort reportedly failed. The post stayed up long enough to be screenshotted, shared, and turned into political ammunition against the film and its star. Then things got even messier. Mark Platt's son, Jonah Platt, decided to publicly weigh in. Jonah, a known actor and podcast host, jumped into the controversy by replying to a social media comment with a scathing takedown of Zegler. He revealed the behind-the-scenes meeting between his father and Zegler, confirming that Mark had flown across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie. Then he dropped a line that would ignite the internet all over again. Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged. That quote spread like wildfire. People saw it as a direct attack, not just on Zegler's political stance, but on her personality, her professionalism, her entire character. And suddenly, this wasn't just a film controversy anymore. It was a public feud, a full-blown internal revolt leaking into the press, with Rachel Zegler as the epicenter. Even more shocking, Hollywood wasn't rushing to defend her. The silence from Disney was deafening. No statements, no support, no damage control, just awkward distance. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get any worse, another Hollywood name, a former co-star, accidentally poured gasoline on the fire. And what she posted next only deepened the public divide. Just when the flames seemed like they couldn't burn any hotter, a familiar name entered the chaos, completely by accident. Ariana DeBose, the Oscar-winning actress who starred alongside Rachel Zegler in West Side Story, suddenly found herself at the center of the storm, and the way it happened was so subtle, so unexpected, that it caught even her fans by surprise. On a quiet Tuesday, Ariana posted a seemingly harmless quote on Instagram. Over a soft photo of a flower bouquet, the words read, "Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged." Sound familiar? It was the exact same quote Jonah Platt had used in his scathing post about Rachel Zegler just days earlier. The same quote that had already gone viral, already stirred headlines, and already drawn harsh criticism toward Zegler. So when Ariana, Rachel's former co-star and a fellow Disney alum, reposted it without context, the internet went into overdrive. Fans immediately assumed it was shade, a subtle jab at Zegler. Was Ariana siding with the Platts? Was she quietly condemning her old castmate? Or worse, was this the start of Hollywood turning its back on Zegler? The speculation exploded. Blogs, YouTubers, and entertainment sites latched onto the story like wildfire. For a brief moment, the conversation wasn't about Disney or the box office anymore. It was about whether Zegler was losing the support of her own peers. But then came Ariana's clarification. She quickly deleted the post and issued a statement saying she had no idea the quote was linked to Jonah Platt's takedown. She explained that she posts motivational quotes all the time and didn't research where this one came from. She stressed that she didn't mean to insert herself into any controversy. It was an honest mistake. At least that's what she claimed. But for many, it didn't matter. Because in today's media cycle, perception is everything. And even if Ariana didn't mean to throw fuel on the fire, she absolutely did. Now the narrative wasn't just Rachel versus Disney, it was Rachel versus the industry. And the deeper the story went, the more it felt like she was becoming Hollywood's favorite scapegoat. But what if this wasn't just about one actress? What if this was part of something much bigger? A deep, uncomfortable double standard that's been hiding in plain sight for years. Rachel Zegler's controversy didn't happen in a vacuum. In fact, the fallout from her social media post exposed something far more uncomfortable than Disney's PR crisis. It revealed the glaring hypocrisy woven into the fabric of Hollywood itself. Because here's the truth, Zegler isn't the first star to speak out on political issues. Not even close. And she definitely isn't the only one to voice support for Palestine during a volatile time. But the way she was treated, that's what made people start asking deeper questions. Take Melissa Barrera, for example. The Scream star was removed from the franchise after posting messages in support of Palestine. No second chances, no soft landing, just fired. Mahad Dakil, a top agent and co-head of motion pictures at CAA, gone. Her crime? Sharing an Instagram post that labeled Israel's military actions as genocide. She apologized. Didn't matter. But then look at Mark Ruffalo. He's one of the most outspoken celebrities when it comes to calling out Israeli policies. He's even used the word apartheid publicly. Yet somehow, he's still beloved, still booking roles, still getting Oscar nominations. Same goes for Guy Pearce, another openly pro-Palestinian actor. Not only did he avoid backlash, he earned his first ever Oscar nomination this year. He was seated front row at the Academy Awards. Not canceled, not silenced, celebrated. So what's the difference? That's the question people started asking. Why are some actors punished for political speech, while others are protected or even praised for the same thing? And the answer, while uncomfortable, started to become clear to many. It depends on who's talking. Zegler is a young, outspoken Latina woman, still early in her career. She wasn't seen as powerful or established enough to survive controversy. That made her an easy target, someone Disney could quietly distance themselves from without rocking the boat. Ruffalo and Pearce, on the other hand, are middle-aged white men with long careers, strong industry connections, and a reputation for being principled. They get more leeway. They're seen as thoughtful, passionate, even when they say the same things that cost others their jobs. This isn't just about politics, it's about power, about who gets to speak without consequences and who doesn't. Rachel Zegler didn't just step into controversy, she stepped into a system that's designed to protect some and punish others, often based on race, age, gender, and status. And while she tried to backtrack and clean up the mess, the damage had already been done. And in Hollywood, once a narrative starts spinning, there's rarely a way to stop it. Once the backlash hit critical mass, Rachel Zegler went quiet. For a while, there were no fiery posts, no interviews, no defiant responses, just silence. The kind of silence that usually means one thing in Hollywood: damage control. Then, slowly, Zegler re-emerged. She began reshaping her narrative. In a new set of interviews and social posts, the tone had shifted. Gone were the critical comments about Snow White. Gone were the political jabs. Instead, she called the role the honor of a lifetime, thanking Disney and expressing her love for the opportunity. It was a clear pivot, an attempt to move away from the controversy and back into the character she was meant to embody: sweet, wholesome, graceful, Snow White. But the internet had already made up its mind. To some, her apology felt like a PR move, too polished, too late. Others questioned whether she even meant it. The original interviews where she mocked the 1937 classic were still circulating. The tweet was still screenshotted, still viral. The quote from Jonah Platt was still being posted and reposted. And while Zegler's tone had changed, the narrative hadn't. People weren't listening to her anymore. They were talking about her, debating her online, dissecting every move, using her name as a proxy in larger cultural wars. She wasn't just Rachel Zegler the actress anymore. She was a symbol of everything people loved or hated about woke Hollywood. Even Disney, it seemed, didn't quite know what to do with her. The studio scaled back promotion for Snow White. Red carpet plans were reportedly scrapped. Pre-order ticket rollouts were delayed. And Rachel, the star of the entire project, was noticeably absent from major press events. It was like the company had pressed mute on its own lead actress. And perhaps most telling, while critics hammered the film, Disney didn't defend her. No public statements of support. No effort to stand by their star. Just distance. Zegler was now walking a tightrope alone, trying to rebuild a brand that was being erased in real time. But behind the curtain, Disney wasn't just distancing itself from Rachel. It was dealing with a much deeper crisis, one that could shape the future of the entire company. By the time Snow White was limping through its second weekend at the box office, Disney was already in full-blown damage control mode. This wasn't just about bad reviews or low ticket sales anymore. It was about public perception and brand survival. Internally, executives were scrambling. The decision to scale back the film's premiere wasn't just about cost. It was about optics. Avoid the press, minimize Zegler's presence, distance the studio from the controversy. Behind closed doors, the pressure was mounting. Whispers of panic spread through the company's media divisions. Future projects involving Zegler suddenly in limbo. Marketing campaigns once built around her face, pulled, paused, quietly shelved. Because the backlash wasn't just coming from fans and online critics anymore. It was coming from regulators, watchdogs, and political power players. In December, Disney settled a defamation lawsuit filed by Donald Trump for $15 million. A move that didn't go unnoticed. And in the wake of that settlement, the FCC launched a new investigation into Disney and its subsidiaries, including ABC, for allegedly violating equal employment opportunity regulations. The target, Disney's DEI policies. According to FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, Disney's internal inclusion standards, which aim to prioritize underrepresented groups in casting, writing, and production, may now be considered discriminatory under newly intensified federal scrutiny. Think about that for a second. The very principles Disney used to justify casting Rachel Zegler as Snow White are now being investigated by the US government. The backlash, once confined to YouTube comment sections and X threads, had now reached the federal level. Disney wasn't just losing money on a movie. It was being called to account for its entire identity strategy. Executives were caught between two fires. One, from culture war critics accusing the company of being too woke, pandering to politics, and disrespecting its legacy. The other from activists and creators who saw Disney retreating, selling out its progressive stance the moment things got hard. No matter which way they moved, someone was furious. And at the center of all this chaos, a 23-year-old actress who thought she was just doing press for her dream role. But this wasn't just about Rachel anymore. The fallout had become a reflection of something much deeper, a cultural collision with no clear winner, and a studio being crushed in the crossfire. At this point, it's clear, Snow White didn't just flop because of box office fatigue or a weak trailer. It collapsed under the weight of something much bigger, a cultural collision that's been quietly building for years and finally exploded at the worst possible moment. Rachel Zegler became the flashpoint, but she wasn't the cause, she was the mirror. Because behind all the drama, the social media fallout, the political backlash, the studio panic, was a deeper battle being fought. A battle over what Hollywood is allowed to be in 2025. And who's allowed to speak freely within it. We've seen this pattern unfold before. An actor or filmmaker speaks out about war, identity, race, or rights, and suddenly their career becomes a litmus test. But what determines whether they survive it? Not the issue, not the passion, but their identity, status, and power. A PhD student can be jailed for writing a pro-Palestinian op-ed. A Hollywood agent can lose her job for sharing a single post. A Latina actress can be publicly dragged for speaking her truth, while older, more established white male actors say the same thing and walk away with Oscars. The message is unspoken but loud. Yes, you can speak up, but only if you're the right kind of person saying the right kind of thing. Even the Academy itself An institution built on celebrating bold artistic voices was now tiptoeing through its own contradictions. After Palestinian director Hamdan Balal was beaten and detained in the West Bank, the Academy released a statement so vague they didn't even mention his name. Only after mass outrage did they issue a proper apology. Meanwhile, the same awards show gave its top documentary honor to No Other Land, a film critical of the IDF, a statement and a contradiction, all in the same night. And while this war over speech, identity, and values unfolds in universities, on red carpets, and in corporate offices, Rachel Zegler is stuck right in the middle of it. She didn't start it, but she sure as hell became the symbol of it. And whether she deserves the backlash or not, one thing is certain: her name is now permanently linked to a moment where Hollywood cracked under its own contradictions. In just a few months, Rachel Zegler's career took a turn no one saw coming, from the top of Disney's billion-dollar dream to the face of its most chaotic failure in years. She didn't get canceled, she didn't disappear, but she became something just as unsettling: a warning, a symbol of what happens when personal values, public platforms, and powerful studios collide at the wrong time, in the wrong way. She was bold, she was outspoken, she didn't play by the studio playbook, and in the world she stepped into, that made her dangerous. Was she naive? Maybe. Was she wrong to speak out? That depends on who you ask, but did she deserve to carry the full weight of a $400 million flop on her back? That's the real question, because Disney had creative misfires, the script faced backlash, the visuals were criticized, audiences were already tired of reboots, and yet, the headlines only seem to say one thing: Rachel Zegler ruined Snow White. Maybe that's just how the industry works, or maybe it says something darker about who gets to lead, who gets to stumble, and who's allowed to recover. What's clear now is that Zegler's story isn't just about controversy, it's about controls over narrative, over identity, over the direction of modern Hollywood. And as Disney continues to pivot, rebrand, and quietly clean up the mess, Rachel's legacy might not be her performance, or her talent, or her politics. It might be the moment the studio realized that being modern comes at a cost, and sometimes it's the star who pays the bill. Because in Hollywood, one line at the end of a tweet can rewrite your entire future.